Welcome to a Savvius Omnipeek demonstration on getting started with Savvius Omnipeek. And Chuck Gray, sales engineer here at Savvius, will be giving the demonstration. Chuck, take it away.
When you do first open up a capture file that's not currently active, it's going to show the summary of what's going on in that capture file up in the top overview pane. And that'll show you, of course, the timeline across the length of the capture. The left-hand part shows you the number of packets and flows and its associated information for that capture. And throughout the program, when you see these types of graphs, you can hover over it and it'll provide some information. If you're interested in a given area, you can click and drag, and that'll focus the data and quite often summarize it in the bottom section. You can also readjust that and drag it along to different points throughout the capture to get updates there. When you want to clear that out, you can just tap the escape button and it'll go back to the full view. And as you see, the little indicator bar is going to reprocess it up for all the current panels. Along the left-hand side, you have the various pieces of information that you can access throughout the program, and some of these may vary depending on the type of capture you have, whether you're capturing wireless, whether you've enabled analysis of things like the web traffic, voice over IP, and that type of thing. So these panels may change depending on what you've turned on throughout the capture or what type of traffic you've captured. The overview dashboards is a good place to start. As you can see in the network area, it does show you the 10-minute window of network utilization. Whenever you see one of these drop-downs, it gives you some further information of how you can format that. You can change the look of the graph to suit your needs and your preference on how you like to look at things. Just like above, you can click and drag in here as well. But you'll notice as I did the click and drag here, it did not update these sections, it just focused on this one period of time in that one view. You can also switch from things like top talkers by IP to top talkers by physical address, and that way you can adjust the views for what you need to analyze, including things like country and a variety of other options that are available to you throughout. In the applications view, of course, you're going to have the more application-centric type of information. When you do have the different headers at the bottom like this, you can click on those and bring that information to focus in the displayed graph. And the same is true for things like response time, so that you can quickly see what's going on, and when you hover over, it'll give you the information for that time period that you're hovering over. The voice and video view can be very helpful when you're troubleshooting voice and video calls. This is a type of thing that is very helpful in a live capture in like the VoIP support NOC, Network Operations Centers, because if you have a live capture running, you can see the live call summary of how many good calls you have compared to how many bad calls you have. At a glance down in the call quality window section, you can see like the red G.711A law protocol, and clicking that and focusing, you can see the drop-off is probably the bad calls are due to this protocol. So you can focus your investigation in on that very easily. And then, of course, you can also take a look how that is represented compared to the rest of the call volume, and as well as how your overall call utilization compares to network utilization. Now, one of the most handy dashboards is a Compass dashboard, because this one is much more interactive and can be a foundation for a lot of the workflows we have. You have a lot of options at the top for things you can do. This is one place when you're going through analysis and you narrow things down, you can do a quick printout of a report of the screens you've got done. When you're doing things like zooming in, you notice it zooms in very quickly, but it also gives you that overview at the bottom, and all these bottom panels do update as you make your selections. I'm going to go ahead and escape back out of there by we can also zoom into the selection. You can hit the double arrow up here to escape back out and zoom to the full view. The different panels at the bottom are configurable. If I wanted to see countries, I could simply click on the little country thing, and that will add it to my panels. If I need to dismiss that, I can click the little pin and it will unpin it. I can switch the views to whichever type of display I prefer. One of the handy things you can do is if you want to focus in on some protocol that you're having problems with or an application, you can click on that, get that overview there, and it'll also give you the summary of the information at the little top legend indicator. You can clear those out by simply right-clicking and uncheck applications. In that case, throughout the program, there are a lot of options when you right-click that'll have context-sensitive menus to allow you to do various things depending on what you have up on the screen. Now, in this case, we do have a list of the average megabits per second. What can be very handy on this is you can also take a look at two-way latency. And when you do that, it does show you your overall application latency in your network versus your average network latency. And it displays that graphically, so you can see in the blue here, the average application latency is quite high. And in the gold color here, you can see there's very little places where the network latency even shows up. So that lets us know where our network's running pretty good, but the applications on the network may be having some slowdowns. And given a little time, I'll walk you through a standard use case on how we can go through and investigate that. When you do want to see additional information, you can pop up the legend, so as you select things in the bottom, they will appear over in that chart, so you can get a good feel for how you're combining the information, and then you can interactively enable and disable things so you can focus in on just the information you want. As before I said, you can uncheck things very quickly from there to get back to your standard view. The other thing we have is you'll see throughout there's different places of information on our expert events. Savvius has been around for over 25 years, and we have pretty much baked in a lot of our network expertise right into the program. So when you click on the expert event view, you can get a lot of information based on those expert events over 25 years of expertise. That just will show up right here. So if I wanted to focus in on my critical events, I can see that I definitely have a problem with my SQL slow server response time. And when I click on that, it'll mark where those problems are throughout the timeline. And then I could go in and select just that application. And then once again, I could turn on the legend so I can take out the overall noise of the network and focus in on just that SQL problem. And once again, that's where it would be handy to be able to save that current view to a report so I can share that information with management or whoever needs to know it. On to the capture side, you can see that we do have basically every detail, every bit of every packet that has flown by. And down in the bottom left, you have your decode view that gives you all the information about what's going on in that packet. And on the right-hand side, you have the hex view with the text decode of that. Some of the nice things in here are that, when you break down into these different pieces of information, you can very easily right-click in here, and you will get information that helps you build a filter based on whatever you've selected that you could then save and use in different capture engines and also share with other users. You can add a column to the top. So if you have a special need to know about that 802.2 logical link control command section, when you add a decode column, you'll have a dynamic decode over up in this section here. And when you scroll down, if there's any information in the other packets, it would automatically display that. If you need additional information, you could pick other fields as well and add multiple decode columns. So that way you have very customizable views that suit your needs and how you like to see things. Throughout the program, when you right-click on the headers, it allows you to select a variety of other pre-built columns of statistics that are available for you. And of course, you can also disable those ones that you no longer need to use. We also do have a direct view of all the different events that are popping up, so that way you can quickly select which ones you're looking for. And once again, a quick right-click will allow you to go through and jump right to those packets or manage them further. So in this case, if I wanted to see the packets that were related to that particular event, I can select those packets and I could do a variety of things with them. In this case, I'm going to tell it I just want to highlight those packets so I can see where they're at. Once I'm here, I have the ability to right-click and I can do a number of things, such as do different name resolution on things, take a look at the summary analysis, apply the different analysis modules, select relative packets. As you can see, it's pretty straightforward in what you can do, but you can also do things like, I want to see what the conversation was like, and you can select things by flow, for example. And then I would copy that over to a new window, and in doing so, I'm focusing in on the conversation that just had that problem. So what I would do is I'd take a look at the expert flows, Here's my flow with the slow server response time, and I can investigate that further. That tends to be a very common workflow going through it. And one thing I'd recommend, whenever you're selecting related packets into a new window, you want to rename the tab. So in this case, I'm going to say, problem flow. And that way, as I dig in through things and I have multiple tabs open, I can always see the trail of how my investigation has gone, so I can get back to the related information and get that overview. A lot of times working through an investigation is a problem of like digging through a haystack looking for that needle, and once you get back and find that needle, sometimes you want to put some hay back in to get some context and understand what's going on around where the problem happened. You do also have the ability to attach notes to the file, so you can save out, a given packet file that you've been investigating, and it will have the notes that are attached to whatever you've learned as you're going. And I'll give you an example of that a little later on as we work through an example workflow. As I said, we do have our experts section. This is one of the really handy sections of the program that gives you a lot of great information. They're basically very similar, but they give you different perspectives on the traffic. So in this one, we're looking at the viewpoint of a client-server conversation. So you can expand out and see what the different clients are, what ports they're using, and get that perspective. Down in the bottom section of all these, we do have our event summaries. We also provide details for whichever thing you've selected, and that's going to vary based on which expert view you're looking at. So for the client-server view, you'll get one set of details. From the application view, you may pop in and take a look at some of the protocols involved, and as you dig into it and you select items, it'll give you different sets of information based on what you're selecting. A lot of this, there's a lot of details to this program, and you'll find ways that really work out best for your workflow. So I do strongly encourage you to take a little time, investigate the different screens, and see which ones work best for you. One of my favorite workflows is actually just to go through the expert flows, because a lot of times I find it easiest to work according to the conversations between two endpoints. To understand best what they have going on with their conversation. And the nice part about that is when you're coming down and looking for different issues of what's going on, like in this case, that slow server response time, when I click on that one, it automatically selects the conversation in the top window where that problem's occurring. If I don't know what that event description actually means, I can go into the Expert Event Finder settings, and there's a Show Info button. And when you click on that, it lets you know what we mean, what the description is of that error. And better yet, it also tells you what we find the typical cause to be of that error, and even a potential remedy to help resolve that error. Another thing you can do is, in this case, in my environment, I know the SQL slow server response time is very important to me. So I adjusted the level of that to make it severe. That way it would pop right up to me in that red dot when I have problems. And I also adjusted the threshold of the alert so that I knew that the speed was actually over a very slow link. So I didn't want it being too noisy if it's just a little slow, but if it does violate this half-a-second threshold, I definitely want it to alert. So the nice part is, once I have selected that, I can actually go up to that particular flow or conversation, and when I right-click on that, I do have an option for the flow visualizer. One thing I will point out is on any of the right-clicks, anything in bold is going to be the default option selected if you were to double-click. So if I were to come over here and just double-click, that'll automatically jump me to the flow visualizer. Now the flow visualizer has a number of tabs along the bottom. And the first tab, Packets, shows you the back and forth flows of the packets. And you'll notice that when we started this capture, we started off probably mid-flow on this one because we have a server as a first packet going to the client when normally a client's going to initiate that. Doesn't matter to us. We still got the captured the rest of the flow and have the information, including our expert column where we can see that we have the slow acknowledgement and slow response times. One of the nice things that I can do is I can adjust the zoom in on this so I can come down and actually see graphically the delays between things and the problems that are occurring are laid out much more clearly this way. So when I scroll down, I can see where my problems lie much easier. And we'll dig into that a little bit further as we go through the example session of what a troubleshooting session would look like. Oh, sorry about that. The other thing we have in the Flow Visualizer is you can also see the payload. If it's not encrypted as you're capturing, you do have all the information. You can adjust it so you display only the client side or the client and server side or just the server side. And you see as they are color-coded between the two. You can see everything that's going on. You also have the ability to pop up a variety of graphs. I'm going to go ahead and hold down Shift and select all of them so you can see the type of information that's displayed. So that way you can see things like the latency over time for this given flow and conversation, and be able to see things like sequence numbers and trace numbers, where if there's anomalies and they drop, you can understand if there's problems with the traffic. Another interesting feature is the what if capability. So if I'm trying to baseline and understand the network traffic in a given area, say I have month-end processing going on with my finance department, and I pick a sample of what one of the users there goes through because they announced they're probably going to increase their staff, I can come into this view, take that sample conversation flow and say, well, what if they had added up another 5 people in that, and it will automatically calculate out what my utilization and transaction times would be like. If they thought they were changing the program, or we were talking about moving them to another office where there might increase latency, we can go ahead and adjust those numbers. And this way you can do a little bit of predictive analysis on what changes could be to your network based on existing flow information. Another handy piece of information you have, in fact, I'm going to go to a different view on this one. If we were doing a wireless capture, and I also do a capture on the LAN side, the Flow Visualizer can be very helpful in that regard, in that I can go to a comparison. And I have my wireless capture on one side, and then I can go over and compare that to the same traffic on the wired side, so I can immediately see in the capture where I have packets that appeared on the wireless capture but never made it over to the wired side of the network. And the top does give me, a summary of how many packets are missing on each side, and it makes it very clear where the problem lies in this regard. A lot of multi-segment analysis and comparison type of capabilities really help you to narrow down where problems are occurring quickly. Of course, you also do have the summary tab that gives you the overall information about response times, clients to servers, and server to client, as well as the events in a given situation with the flows. Now going back over to our workshop, I'm going to move down. We have another section that is more web-centric, and it's once again different perspectives on the same type of data, where you can go in and take a look at the breakdown of the different web calls that are being made in great detail. So you can see the server perspective or the client perspective of the same type of traffic. You can see the information of how the pages are performing and what they're doing, because you have the information for the headers and the contents of the information as well, including being able to decode things like the graphic attachments, and also be able to see the timing of what's going on there. And you, of course, also have the view of the different broken out requests that are going on with the same type of information. You also do have the ability with your voice over IP to get really granular and understand what's going on call by call. One of the things I find very handy is pretty much throughout the program, you can click on any of the columns and it will automatically sort that column. So when I click on the mean opinion score low quality, it automatically sorts by that, and it groups all of my poor quality calls together. Hovering over the little icon kind of shows me the thresholds of what means what there. You do have the ability to actually save out the call or play back the audio from the call. And similar to the flows view, you have the ability to look at the voice and video flow visualizer. And in doing that, you can quickly see the setup and teardown of the call and how the quality of that is. I can really take advantage of my right-click column choices by coming in here and being able to pop up additional information on jitter, so you can see that at each point of the call, which may help to point out at what stage problems are being introduced. And of course, you can also pop up your call quality information very easily, so you can see where it does actually get affected throughout the course of the call. Now, you do also have the ability, let me see if I can pop one up, that in that voice and video visualizer, if you have like a call manager or a proxy in the middle, it'll pick up that information as well. So you can get that level of detail and have a better understanding if there is problems, at one point of the call but not at the other. In addition, when you're in the summaries down here, the details can be very helpful for your voice over IP analysis people. It has a lot of the good information regarding the setup times, the starts, finishes, the details of it. And in addition to the two-way information in the media view, you can get a look at each side of the conversation and how that was going. And when you take a look at the details there, it gives you the additional information about packet loss, jitter, and so forth. The voice engineers find this type of information very helpful, and it makes it very quick to get to that instead of trying to pick it together based out of just the packet details. Having these type of quick interactive analysis options available really help makes the analysis much more efficient. In that same vein, one of the helpful views we have is our peer map, and this gives you an idea at a glance of what the conversations are in your network. This workshop does have 15,000 plus nodes in it, but off at the top over on the right, you can see we're looking at just the top 100. The information provided to us shows that things like the thickest line has the most amount of traffic. The lines that have a lot of multiple segments to it, when I hover over it, you can see that means that it has a number of different protocols being used. I find this helpful. As you can see, we have the different types of protocols listed here. If I wanted to take a quick look at this, I'm going to turn off everything and highlight, for example, just FTP, so I can see where I have maybe a plain text transmission going by, so I can add HTTP to that as well. So at a glance, I can know that I've actually got perhaps a violation of policy going on in my network because I have clear text protocols where perhaps that should not be allowed. What I can do in that regard as well is I could go straight to my protocols and I could pick it out from the list here. Once again, I would just sort by the name of the protocol instead, and then I would pick out the one I was interested in. I could then use that select related packets, which is actually a very common workflow for us. You pick out the information you want, you select the related packets, and instead of dealing with the 253,000 packets that you see up in the top left, in the selection results, we're going to narrow that down to only 2,100 packets. So when I copy that to a new window, I'm going to get just my HTTP traffic. I'm going to go ahead and follow my good work practice here and rename this so I know what I'm doing, and you can see the application listed as HTTP. Now the nice part is I could go to my nodes view and I immediately can see which users are involved in that. And in fact, I can sort it by country or by IP, and then I would be able to know which ones in my private network are the ones that are violating policy, and I could act on that quickly. I could also come up to my file menu, save a report of that. I could save the packets out so I have a record of that, and I could attach to a help desk file or what have you. So back to the peer map, we saw the usefulness of that. You do have the ability to resolve names here. I will caution you that resolving names here will result in an active DNS lookup, but you can do it one node at a time to minimize the impact of that. You also have, for reporting capabilities, a variety of graphs. These are customizable. You can add extra statistics to it. And in fact, from the summary statistics, there's some quick shortcuts on the right-click menu that enable you to add a variety of statistics or create new reports. You can also change the views to things that make it a little clearer for the way you like to see it. We also have introduced the capability to view the files that are being transferred over, FTP or HTTP. That can be really useful for your security guys. I mean, aside from being able to see the contents of a graphic, they can see the details of the information about that, where it's coming from and going to, and other details, but also the information, response headers, the request headers. But what it can be particularly interesting for is if your security guys want to see the contents of perhaps JavaScript or something like that attached, they can see the details of what's going on in it. They can also go in and save that out for further investigations. You can do, like on many different screens, filter that down to just the conversation or flow that was going on. So you really have pinpointed information you can save to use cases and have for forensic history. Now down in the bottom, we also have the overview summary of what's being seen, and there is obviously a lot of information here. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll right-click and collapse all, so then I can go in and take a look at just the sections that I want, and I can see what the details are like, and if I need to, trim down and get to understand a particular portion of it, I can go in and say, well, I'm concerned about my connection refused information. So I can go in and, adjust my event finder settings for things like that and consider, well, maybe it's not a major, I want that to be a severe event. And then that way in future views of that, that'll become in my expert views, that adjusted event quality. One thing I will note, if you're actually using one of the capture engines, you can go into this section, and in the right-click menu, it'll also have the ability to set alerts and alarms on that. You do have the view that can show you the different nodes. I do encourage you to watch for drop-down options, because you can do things like take a look at this instead of from the IP view or the MAC address or physical layer 2 view. You can look at it in terms of the hierarchy. And what that gives you is it lets you know that associated with this MAC address are quite a number of IP addresses, and that would indicate that this is probably a switch or a router in your environment. So it makes it very easy to identify those as opposed to a single individual's endpoint node. So that can be quite handy there as well. We also have the view of the protocols that work much in the same way, so you can take a look at it in hierarchical view, so that way you can kind of see how things are embedded in the encapsulation throughout the way the protocol operates. You also have the applications view. This one's a little on the older side, so it doesn't have as much of the new stuff. So right before I did this, I did do a capture off my local LAN client. And that has a little bit more interesting view of the different applications, and this can quite readily be used to say, hey, I need to know who's out there doing streaming media, and I could go in, select the related packets, and once again dig down to who the nodes are involved. It makes it very easy to quickly see who might be violating policy or where the major users are of a given type of application. Another handy thing is that you have the view by country, so that if you know you're not supposed to be, you don't have any partners, say in Japan, and you shouldn't have any connections with that, you would be able to quickly see who's communicating with that. One thing I will point out is in the peer map, as I said, you can do the lookups. You also have the ability to come in and you can change things in the name table, and you can identify things as saying, hey, that's a workstation, and this is Chuck's workstation, and then throughout the rest of the program that will be updated, so in reports it'll list that out as my workstation. So there is quite a lot of customizable capabilities here. Now, one thing I'll also point out is you've seen the list of things here. If we're doing a wireless capture, for example, you can see that we have a different set of things here that pertain to just wireless capabilities. So you can see things like the different wireless LANs that are in your environment. One of the nice things here is you can go in and say, well, these are the ones that are not in my network. They're neighboring companies. I know they're always there, but they're not mine, so I'll mark them as known. Now, I can say that these guys are in my network, so I'll mark them as trusted. The nice part is, as I look at this, as the capture is going on, it'll become pretty clear when I have a new node popping up. So I could come in and watch it by access point, and if I see that I have my UKHC networks and suddenly a new access point pops up, I can tell at a glance that it's an unknown one, and I'd be able to dig into that, find that node and find out whether or not it's a valid one in my network or not. You also, of course, have the ability to look at all the different channel information. And as you can see, it's quite extensive, but it gives you a lot of information about connected speeds of clients and additional such related information. At the overview, you can get information on the signal strengths that are involved in your capture, signal to noise ratio, things like that. Quite a lot of useful information for your wireless network engineers. You also have the ability, when you're capturing appropriately, to be able to see what the roaming statistics are like and how long it takes somebody to perform a roaming operation. And you can actually go in and double click on that, and you can see I have the 3 packets selected that are involved in the roaming, and I can highlight those selected packets so I can see how the encryption connection goes to a reassociation request, and then so on as it goes through. And you can look at that in a variety of ways. Now, one thing I would like to do is just walk you through a common usage. I'm going to go back to the workshop file. Now, normally, I'd be starting off by looking at this perhaps by my overall utilization. I might like to have my view a little different. I might want to get my overhead noise out of there. I'm going to go ahead and uncheck things so I'm kind of at a clean view again. Now, when I was working as a network engineer, one of the things I often saw was, you get a call at the help desk, and a user would be calling in saying, hey, your network's slow. People are having difficulty, getting to my SQL server. And they may not provide a whole lot of information. So one of the things I can do is I can come to this compass overview, basically take a look at the capture that's in about the time frame when they had the problem or with current problems happening while it's live. And then I would select my SQL protocol or application, and I can see at first glance that I'm not having a problem with the application itself overwhelming the network. It's very little utilization. So what I want to do is click on this and check out my two-way latency to see what the delays are looking like. Now, I currently have my overall network average mixed in here, so I want to focus in a little better on just the SQL. So I'm going to open up my legend, turn off my overall average network so I can see just the SQL traffic. And as you can see in purple, it's very clear that the application has much more latency than the network does. Now, the nice thing is I can right-click in this upper section and follow that workflow where I'm going to focus in on that data. So I'm not looking at the overall 253,000 packets, but I'm going to select the related, copy them to a new window, and that way I just have the 7,000 or so. So that opens up that new tab. I'm going to follow my best practices here and rename that so I know I'm dealing with MS SQL traffic. And you can see, oops, hopefully you don't typo as much as I do. You can see in the application column that we are just focused on that. I could do some investigation here, but I don't need to really because I can rely on my expert flows. And once again, I want to see my event summaries, and right there it jumps right out at me that I have my slow server response time. And then it does select those conversations. I could pick out one that I know is involved, and then I could go to my flow visualizer with that simple right click. And in doing so, you notice the view stays at what I had looked at last, but I want to take a look at my packets. I'm going to look for that expert event, so I'm going to go ahead and scroll down, and here I see I have my slow server response time event. Now the nice part is I can see at packet 728, I'm sending my SYN packet. And then immediately, less than a tenth of a second, I'm getting back my acknowledgement packet. That tells me that it's not the network that's at fault. The network card on the server is responding very quickly. But it takes over a full second for me to get data back. Now, it's one thing to be able to point back to the caller and say, hey, it's not my fault. My tool says and proves it's not the network. I find it to be much more helpful to be able to go in and give them something constructive to work with. So I'm going to note that between packet 728 and 808 is where my problem lies. So I'm going to look at my payload, and once again, as long as it's not encrypted, I can see that back and forth. When I hover over one of these, it tells me what packet number I'm at. I'm at 608 here, so I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and there's packet 728. I'm going to select that by triple clicking, and I can go in and actually copy that out and then send it to the requester, suggesting that they take this query back to their SQL Server admin and have them run this query locally on the system so he can see that it slows down there. And that may help him out in knowing that maybe he needs to re-index his database or whatever other corrective action. The other thing I can do is I can come in here and make a note of what I did. And have all the details there. And when I save that, I now have a note in my related capture, which thanks to the trail I'm keeping. I know it's that one right there. I can go to my notes, and instead of having to save out the 253,000 packets, I can save out just this by going File, Save All Packets, and put it wherever I want and give it whatever name is helpful. You know, SQL slowdown help. And then that way, I've got a record of that that could be attached to a help desk ticket, and that way it's a much smaller piece of record. When I reopen it, I can come right back to my notes. I can tell it to go to the packet that's involved with that problem, and then I can go ahead and do my right click, select the related flow, and there I go. I'm right back to where I discovered and analyzed the problem. So this is one of the good things that can give you a good record of that. And that's just an example of, you know, how we can work through a typical workflow of how things are going in your network and be able to quickly identify a problem and get to helpful information to resolve it. Since we have a little bit of time here, I'm going to go ahead and give you a look at the capture engines. What we have here is some of the remote capture points. So instead of being able to capture just directly from my Omnipeek that's installed on my laptop, I also have remote capture engines or appliances that have the capture capability in my lab. And I'm able to list those out and connect to those, and this is where it can be helpful for doing comparative captures and such. I'm connected to one of our little insight units in the lab, and I have the capability to go in and see running captures. This insight unit also has the ability to capture up and report aggregated statistics to Elk or Splunk, so you can get that overview, aggregated data over time. And all of our capture products have the ability to do statistical captures that can be fed to that, so you can also have that aggregated over time capability. Much like the other captures we saw that we're looking at locally, they're available here on this device. I can run forensic searches over time on these, you know, taking a look at where I have peak traffic, selecting in, and then saying, hey, do a forensic search. And I'm able to then go in and I can search, you know, given a given time frame. I can put a variety of filters on the information. So, and these filters, by the way, are available at capture time and at view time. And it allows you to do a number of things like look at given protocols, applications, security, defined things. So it's a wealth of information we'll dig into in later sessions. But then you also have the ability to adjust what you want to analyze and bring back. When you do a search, it's going to pop it up locally initially on that remote engine, so you're not bringing a bunch of packets back to your local Omnipeek. Once you go through and dig down into the information, you know, a second or third dig into it, that's when it would bring packets back locally for you to continue working on it. And typically, you know, our remote appliances are designed to have a lot of hard drive space, so you have quite a bit of back-in-time capability. So it's not the type of thing where when a problem comes into the help desk, you have to wait for the problem to reoccur. You can just go ahead and jump into one of your appliances and be able to go back in time when the problem actually happened and be able to dig through it. And it'll write out, you know, sets of files, so you can search through it by that way, or by doing the forensic searches as I briefly showed here. That's the quick overview and introduction. Hopefully you found that helpful.